crazy with grandkids. I'll be over there testing, so I feel always go, Adeline,
What, this?
stop that right now. And he'll be like, just say stuff now. Count to 3. 1, 2, and I'll be sitting there going, 3, 3.
My brother.
Are you ready? Okay.
My kids,
Good
if I
evening.
got to 3, they better be running.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Peoria Public Schools District 150 Board of Education meeting for November 10th, 2014 to order. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bateman.
Here.
Mrs. Butler.
Here.
Mrs. Ross. Here. Mrs. Costa. Here. Mr. Crawford.
Here.
Mr. Coy.
Here.
Mrs. Wolfmeyer.
Here. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to begin this evening with our awards and recognition, and we're going to start with the recognition of Peoria's finest teacher, Mrs. Meyer.
Good evening. Peoria's Finest Teacher is a monthly recognition that we are sponsoring for those members of PFT that go above and beyond, exemplify best practices in teaching, and/or reach out to the community and the parents to be involved in our schools. The teachers in this district work so hard to serve the children and families of Peoria each day, and we want to showcase this positive effort. We want to thank our winner's principal, Mr. Swanson, and any faculty, friends, and family that are here in support of our winner. Our nominator of this month's winner is Katie Elledge. If you'll come up, Katie. And this month's Peoria's Finest Teacher is Leah Melendi at Calvin Coolidge. Congratulations. Come up, Leah.
There are many teachers at Calvin Coolidge that could deserve this award, but Leah caught my eye this summer. She came in ready to go after AVID training, barely waiting for the wax on the floor to dry, dragging her 2 kids with her with juice and snacks, ready to get her room and plans going for this fall. Leah is a caring, hardworking teacher. She does not hesitate to step up and help other teachers. Recently, she's been busy writing grants to ensure student success. A top priority for her has been using her leadership skills to implement our AVID program. Her classroom is overflowing with evidence of students' work indicating her high expectations. And to top it all off, she continues her dedication to career as she is working to obtain her master's degree. Leah Melendi is a passionate teacher, well deserving of this award tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. It really is easy to come to work every day. It's easy to come to work with the staff that I work with, who is so supportive. So many of them are here, which I appreciate. You know, I love my job. That makes all of this not even seem difficult. So, all right, thank you.
Congratulations on behalf of the board, and thank you to the PFT for giving this award every month. It's just another fine example of the wonderful, dedicated staff that we have in our district. So thank you to the PFT for continuing this. Thank you. Are there any announcements by board members tonight? Mr. Bateman.
Yes, I just want to inform the board, Mr. Cloyd and I had the opportunity last Friday to attend the Veterans Day program at Manual High School. As a veteran myself, what an honor it was to observe and be present for the efforts that the Manual Junior ROTC program put forth in the program that they had. One of the, it showed a lot of discipline and a lot of effort in the students, which was greatly appreciated by the veterans that were present, as well as one of the most poignant moments for me was a KIA-MIA remembrance where they talked about the symbolism and the information that is present at a table that is set to remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice in service of their country. Those tables are present in every dining facility across the United States and also in areas such as Afghanistan and Iraq, where our soldiers are serving to remind those soldiers of those soldiers who are no longer with us and the sacrifice they paid, as well as the sacrifice their families also endure as their service members do not come home. So with that, I would like to ask everyone present for a few moments of silence as we honor Veterans Day tomorrow and remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice and did not return. Thank you very much, and to all the veterans or any veterans that are present today, I wish you a very happy Veterans Day, and thank you very much for your service to this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements?
You have one?
No.
Okay. We'd like to recognize Harrison Community Learning Center. They have the displays here in the boardroom tonight. They will be hosting Parent University next Wednesday night, November 19th, from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. So go online, and information will also be shared via the different schools' websites. But thank you to Harrison for the decorations. Also, special congratulations to Peoria High, who advanced on to the state football playoffs. They'll be playing again this Saturday at the stadium. Game time is 2 p.m., if I'm not mistaken, and you can purchase tickets starting at 1 o'clock or purchase them on Friday from Peoria High. So congratulations again to the Peoria High Lions.
Are there any other announcements? Okay, that brings us to our presentations. We're going to start off with the Peoria Foundation Classroom Grants. Mrs. Morris.
Good evening, Dr. Lathan and board members. We're pleased tonight to be here to recognize the 2014 Classroom Grant recipients. We are here with, I have a few people to recognize. Foundation Board Member Kathy Wiggers, who serves as well on the Classroom Grant Committee. There you are, Kathy, okay. We have Jessica Dillon from the Community Foundation of Central Illinois, and these grants are made possible from the Peoria Public Schools Foundation and the Rena and Murray Yeoman Fund from the Community Foundation. I'd like to also recognize and thank the principals that are here tonight for supporting your teachers and your encouragement of our program. We have a few members from the Classroom Grant Committee. We have Shannon Marlin here, Tanya Jenkins, and again, Kathy Wiggers. We'll start off. We had 44 applications this year. We're up from 39 last year. The goal is to always have more applications and fund more grants. So this year we are granting 24 grants. One school did have a team of 4, and I'd like to ask for the teachers to come up and line up here. And the first one that we're recognizing tonight is Caitlin Reardon of Roosevelt School. We have Michelle Boucher of Sterling School. We have Michelle Corey of Sterling School. We have Kirsten Kelly of Sterling School. And as a reminder, every teacher in District 150 is able to apply for a grant. So, you'll notice some that are multiple, but it's all based on the quality and the grant application. Our next recipient is Elizabeth Smiley of Thomas Jefferson School. We have Cammie Williams of Tree Wind School. Molly Herman of Valeska Hinton. Okay. We have Sheila Stewart of Von Steuben School. We have Denise Fritsch of Whittier School. And we have Rebecca Pruse of Woodruff Career and Technical School. Okay, and I'm going to have Jessica Dillon come up and she can name the others.
Okay, next we have Michelle Kuby from Calvin Coolidge School. And then we have Debbie Harn of Franklin School. Marcia Lowe of Franklin. It's a beautiful family affair. Mary LeKemper of Franklin School. And then we have a team of 4 from Glen Oak School that include Jennifer Mazzarelli, Gail Hoban, April Hunter, and Melissa Kaufman. Now we also have Leah Routley of Harrison School. Tanya Lasota of Harrison School. Melissa Pletkovich of Hines School. Wesley Stevens of Lindbergh School. Then we have another team of Sarah Lane and Karen Burris from Northmore. Deborah Reddington of Peoria High School. Travis Bolbley of Richwoods High School. And last but certainly not least, Beth Pierce of Rolling Acres School. And a very warm congratulations to all of you. The Community Foundation and the Peoria Public Schools Foundation is very proud to be able to provide you support in the classroom. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to all the teachers And thank you to the Community Foundation and the District 150 Foundation for providing the opportunity to apply for these funds for our teachers to use in their classroom. Thank you very much.
Shelley Doherty. I just have to apologize. We left out one teacher, so I'd like to recognize her. We don't have the certificate here. We have Shelley Doherty here from Richwoods High School.
Okay, that brings us to our first quarter discipline report tonight, and we also have administrators from Woodruff Career and Technical Center to sort of answer questions and have a discussion on how things work down at Woodruff with the children that are expelled and they go down there, and what you've got going on down there. So we'll get. Go ahead.
Including the role of how the contemporary school interacts with the safe school or doesn't interact, and why. And so we want to make sure we explain the difference in the two programs. Remember, we have 3 programs housed at Woodruff, but thought it would be better for the staff to come and kind of just provide that information.
Okay.
We're going to do the overall discipline, district discipline information, then we'll move into the discussion of Woodruff.
Good evening. This evening, I'd like to present to the board and to the public a report on the number of suspensions and expulsions and the various data concerning those as compared to the last 2 years. The first slide here shows that as of the last day of the first 9 weeks, we had an enrollment of 13,527 students. This does not count those students that were on home tutor or who were in residential settings or the Quest students. But this year we had a total number of suspension days of 3,130. A number of suspensions were 1,395, and the average suspension day, or the length of every suspension, the average was 2.2 days. The number of suspensions, as noted by students with single suspension, student with 2 suspensions, student with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you'll see there that there were 645 students that had 1 suspension only, 179 had 2 suspensions, 80 had 3, 23, 4, and the 5, 6, and 7, there were 11 students that had that number of suspensions, and of those 11, 10 of those were special ed students. I have listed the number of suspensions for each school. The order that the schools are listed is alphabetical, I hope. Calvin Coolidge had 41, Charter Oak 7, Day Treatment 70, Franklin 38, Glen Oak 71, Harrison 41, and Hines 20.
Can you pull out, go back, Bill, please?
Yes.
Pull out the information to explain where you see the numbers with day treatment. Explain that program, please.
The day treatment program, this year we have a new administration there that is working with the students. We also have had some situations there where we've had a hard time getting staff, so we've been short on staff, but it's been a very difficult group of students, and that is our emotionally and behaviorally disturbed students that are at that school. Keller had 2 suspensions, Knoxville Center 3.
Excuse me a second.
Yes, sir.
Can we go back a slide?
Yes.
Wrong way.
Oops, wrong way.
Still wrong way. There we go. Oop. Calvin Coolidge and Harrison, what was done significantly different at those 2 schools to amount in that significant a reduction in disciplinary issues?
One of the things we had to do early on last year, and you'll see definitely last year as it relates to Calvin Coolidge, is we had a change in staff, and so going back through with PBIS, reinforcing that, spending more time scheduling, making sure that we improved on the scheduling there as it relates to the discipline, and then putting some things in place as it relates to accountability. So we saw those numbers decrease there. At Harrison, once again, looking at the total programming, things around PBIS and the support. We also have the elite staff that's there in their second year at Harrison. So putting those structures in place. There was also some scheduling there, some other things that we had to do as it related to the resources and the staff involved.
And then,
Isn't it also possible, though, that, especially when you have a change in administration in a building, that for that year, their first year, sometimes the numbers go up
And both of those had first
as
principals last year.
those principals take control of the
Exactly
building, and as the students get used to, okay, this is how it's going to be, then the numbers sometimes go down. I don't see it alarming, because I think a new principal needs to come in, especially if there's been a problem in the building, and take control, and the kids have to get used to them. They're going to try a new person no matter what, so.
and then the counter to that, what happened, Gleno? It's almost a three-level increase.
Just different things, and you've seen a lot of those as it relates to some incidents around weapons or toy-like weapons and things of that nature, and then some behaviors. So it's a multitude of things.
Okay, thank you.
Again, Keller had 2, Knoxville Center had 3 suspensions, Lincoln 92, Lindbergh 35, Manual Academy 189, Mark Bills 35, and Northmore 7. Peoria High 206, Richwood 61, Rolling Acres 14, Roosevelt Magnet School 67, Sterling 99, Thomas Jefferson 30, and Tree Wind 100. Valeska Hinton had 6, Von Steuben 44, Washington Gifted 3, Whittier 19, Woodrow Wilson 20, Woodruff Alternative School 60, and the Woodruff Safe School 15. Here, the suspensions are listed by grade level. The pre-K had 2, kindergarten 37, first grade 35, second grade 63, third grade 50, fourth grade 115, fifth grade 123, sixth grade 89, seventh grade 199, eighth grade 169, ninth grade 215, 10th grade 171, 11th grade 97, and 12th grade had 29 suspensions. Special education compared to regular ed students, 444 special ed students were suspended and 951 regular ed students. Female compared to male, 424 females compared to 971 males. The first thing you need to know about this slide is the fact that these are federal guidelines, and the first thing that a student has to do is determine whether or not they're Hispanic or not Hispanic, and then they determine their race beyond that point. So there were 39 students that were identified as Hispanic who were suspended, but they are also included in the other ethnic groups. Multiracial had 98 suspensions, white 147, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander 3, Black African American 1,136, Asian 4, American Indian or Alaskan 7.
Are those individual students or are those suspensions?
Pardon?
Are those individual students or are those the number of suspensions?
Number of suspensions.
So that's not 1,136 different students? No. Okay.
No, it's not. Now, I will go through some of the reasons that students were suspended and the numbers of suspensions for those. There were 275 students the first 9 weeks suspended for fighting. There were 292 who were suspended for non-physical aggression, which means that there was no touching involved. It was more yelling or throwing a fit, maybe, or screaming at someone. There were 24 students who were suspended for attacking another student. In other words, they hit the student, but the student didn't retaliate. There were 79 suspensions for aggressions towards staff, and that would be staff was in some way touched. 24 of those suspensions were issued at day treatment, which is our behavior and emotionally disabled students. Also, of the, there were then 44 of the remaining students were suspended from the primary grades, which for the most part were young students who maybe hit the teacher on the arm, hit the teacher in the leg, possibly kicked the teacher, but it was not considered battery to staff. There were 7 instances of battery to staff.
Question.
Yes.
So battery to staff, or is that considered intentionally hitting?
Not necessarily intentional. Battery to staff could be, excuse me, where there was a fight, a staff member tried to break it up and the staff member was struck.
Well, what's the difference between aggression, the aggression towards staff?
The difference generally is, would the student be arrested? Would the police arrest the student?
Okay.
Gang and gang activity, there were 5 suspensions for that. 21 suspensions for drugs or drug paraphernalia, 4 suspensions for tobacco or having tobacco products, and 8 suspensions for alcohol, either having it or being under the influence. Sexual misconduct verbally, there were 6 suspensions. Sexual misconduct for physical, 16, and sexual misconduct electronic, 1. Threats towards the staff, there were 14. Threats towards other students, 16, and bullying, there were 16 suspensions. What you see threatening and bullying at the bottom there, we decided to separate those this year. So last 2 years, they were combined together. There were 49 suspensions for cutting class or cutting school. There were 60 suspensions for inappropriate language used towards the staff. There were 31 suspensions for inappropriate language just being used. 105 suspensions for disruption. 272 for insubordination. Yes?
Can insubordination be a catch-all?
Yes, we've tried to make it where we can define it better, but generally insubordination is refusing to follow the directives of staff. Trespassing, 4 suspensions. Theft, 22. Vandalism, there were 8. Electronics, 16. Cutting an intervention study hall Saturday school, 21. And all others like COM, FOG, and ICU, improper computer usage, failure to identify yourself, and combustibles, there were 4. This year, the Family Corps is offering a suspension respite program at the church, the Methodist church right over here. And they had asked us if we would let any of our students know who are suspended that that program is available, that they can go there and work at the church while they are suspended. We have been able to send a flyer out with a suspension notice to let them know that that is available at no cost to the district. And these are the results for August, September, and October.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I don't think it's accurate when you say no cost to the district. While they already had the program, the district, they have a $400,000 grant with the district, and part of that is listed in that grant.
For the Family Corps employees that are, the contractors for the employees that are housed out of different district schools.
Right. So I think it's a program that is going to be used more and more. And this last slide is a comparison to the actions that you as a board have taken for the first 9 weeks. There were 2 students whose board probation was revoked. There are 9 students whose abeyance was revoked. There are 17 students who were expelled, and that expulsion was held in abeyance, and there were 9 students who were expelled. Yes?
Just for information purposes, can you explain each of these categories so that the audience has an understanding of what the abeyance is, what it entails, please?
You want me to explain all of them? Or just the abeyance?
The abeyance.
Expulsion, with the expulsion held in abeyance, is an option that you as a board can offer to students who have done some incident or some act that is expellable. And what happens is that the student is expelled, but that expulsion is held in abeyance. The way I like to explain it to the parents and the students is it's like the expulsion is something I'm holding in the balloon. And the only way that that balloon will break and that student will be expelled is if they do another act which is an expellable offense. If they do that, then the expulsion that's being held in abeyance would go into effect once I go back to the board and let you know that they have done that.
But abeyance in itself is that the student is still at their home school.
Correct. Any student who has an expulsion held in abeyance stays in their home school, and as long as they do not violate that abeyance contract that they sign, then they will complete the expulsion time period and all will be done.
And don't the schools, aren't they the ones that usually recommend a student for the abeyance program?
Yes, yes.
And a lot of the thinking behind that was that we have children who might have made one mistake, and we want an alternative to give them a second chance.
Correct. The expulsions held in abeyance took the place of those people who have been here for a while. There was a program that we called the Alternative Probation Program. And that was the same type of thing, only it was left up to the schools to explain the program and have a contract signed at the schools. The lawyers have told us that we needed to hold a hearing so that the charges against the student could be presented, the evidence could be presented that either held the charge up or didn't hold the charge up, and the student and his parent or a lawyer could present any evidence to the contrary to show that the student did not do that violation. So every student who is expelled, whether it be expulsion for abeyance or a regular expulsion, has a hearing where they can hear what the charges are against them, they can hear the evidence that is being presented to show that they did do that violation, and they also have an opportunity to present any evidence that they have to refute the charges. And Expulsion or expulsion held with abeyance, they are allowed legal counsel at any of those hearings.
Mr. Salsa, the numbers that you have on this slide, up to what date do they represent? What numbers are represented? You said the first 9 weeks.
Correct.
Of course, we have some tonight that's not included in here.
Correct,
Does
and
this
the
include
ones from the last board meeting are not included.
Okay, that's what threw me off, because there's been that many.
The first 9 weeks ended prior to the last board meeting.
Okay.
Just, I have a question too, but
Any questions?
right, this is compared to the same time period of last year, right? Okay.
Yes,
First 9 weeks, okay.
Right.
yes.
There just seemed to be some irony that the penalty for cutting class is suspension. I mean,
9 weeks of last year.
doesn't that give the student exactly what they were seeking in the first place by cutting classes?
Just for clarification, the different lines up there for the different years, you were comparing the first 9 weeks for the last 3 years, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Now, let me get back to my question of irony here, and that is, if a student is misbehaving by cutting classes and his punishment is suspension, isn't that the best possible thing they could get?
But can you go, and I want to answer your question, and I think it needs to come from the administrators to explain how you arrive at that place. There might be in-school suspension, detentions, some other things before it gets to a suspension. So can you respond to Mr. Corey's question, please?
Sure. So, and I can't speak, I can only speak in general terms as opposed to specifics, but say at Woodruff, we have layers of interventions or consequences that lead up to a suspension. So if they're cutting classes, they may go into alternative room, or they may get a Saturday school, or they may get an in-school suspension. What are they doing when they cut that class is also a factor into that. So there's on the surface, you wouldn't do that, but there's usually mitigating circumstances.
Okay.
If that helps at all.
I'm going knocking on a classroom door, I'm interrupting another class. It's under that code of cutting class, but there are other things when you look at the full description of what I did when I cut class, that might also lead to that suspension.
Okay, well,
Part of the other part that it didn't indicate is what interventions took place prior to that suspension. It could have been, this was the 7th time, the 10th time this person has cut class. So the information only indicates that the offense that occurred received a suspension. However, the other interventions of a parent contact, a parent conference, a conference with a counselor, an in-school, an offer. I know some of the schools offer demerits, which we don't, so it could have been demerits. But it's a buildup of those. It's not an immediate cut class, that's it, you're suspended. It's a series of interventions leading up to that could have led to that suspension.
okay. Does anybody feel with this volume of suspensions that it has any change in effect on behavior?
Sometimes. I mean, it all depends. It depends on the student. It depends upon the situation. Sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. Under what circumstances is it most likely to work? Generally.
Are we talking cutting class or just
generally? I mean,
I think that those who are suspended over and over again, and that becomes the expectation, is that, okay, I'm just going to be suspended. That doesn't work. I think if it's a rare occurrence with many of our students, and it is a rare occurrence with many of our students, it works. It depends upon what they did, and then you try to fit what they did to an appropriate consequence. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but that's true with many things that we do. It is an art as opposed to a science sometimes.
Fair to say that with those who were involved with multiple suspensions, we're drifting away from the suspension as being really an effective tool in terms of reeling them back into the academic.
Yeah, and to be honest, there are times as an administrator when you have to make the decision based upon
what's right for the entire student body, as well as the district, as well as the community. Suspensions are rarely, and discipline is rarely, does it happen in a vacuum. You have to consider all sorts of things. Doling out justice as an administrator is the hardest thing to do. So you have to be thoughtful about it, and I know that I wring my hands over every suspension.
Could I ask you a question, sir?
Sure.
When you say sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, what have you changed when it doesn't work? What do you go back to the drawing board and do something different, or do we just continually?
The answer is yes. Knowing that if that suspension is effective, then you'll certainly see a change in the behavior. But what happens when it doesn't? And you go back to, what are the other resources you can go to that if this isn't proving to be effective? What other resources? Maybe it's not necessarily within the building that we can address. We need to contact outside resources to better facilitate the needs of this child. And those contacts are made through the use of counseling, through outside agencies, children's home, things like that, to better to do that. So yes, those things are balanced in that. They're considered. If it's not effective, then what will be? And what else can we do to better support that child, better support the parents to do that? Because you're right, sometimes it isn't. And in the times that it isn't, we have to go back to that. What can be done as we go through that?
Yeah, go ahead. We have a process in place right now when a child is expelled, and they're offered an opportunity to go to the safe school. And the process, in-house process, is that the parents have to contact you within 7 days. What kind of data do you have on whether or not the parent contacted you in 7 days, and what happens if they don't contact you in 7 days?
Well, I keep track of the students whose parents called, and I make sure that I make note that if they've called, because part of the expectation is that it says so on the board action report that it states you have within 7 days. And there are times that we call because we know that if we have an available spot, that student has an ability to place, so we make that call from time to time. So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The only reason I'm interrupting is, I just thought we should introduce, this is Mr. Eastloss, Tony Eastloss, who's on the Safe School. He's the administrator on the Safe School floor.
Okay,
So,
good. Okay, so
Sorry.
he's the expert in the area.
Well, I don't know about expert, no.
Well, I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
wrap my head around what happens when they leave here and come there. And if they, for instance, we see that you have one slot open in 10th grade. And we have, tonight, I think we have 3 10th graders that are being expelled. But before, 2 weeks ago, we had several 10th graders. So my question is, if you have one slot available, does that mean that those people from 2 weeks ago have already contacted you? And you know, what happens there? So
When they call, if we have a slot available, we tell them, come in, we have a date we'd like for you to come in to go through the intake process, where we go through discussing the process, the program, the expectations. Once the spots fill, then we put them on the wait list, because what I want to make sure is that I document that person did make within that 7-day period their call to us, making sure that they followed board action. Until a spot opens up, then it's not available to them. But their name is considered, and then as soon as the spot opens up, we contact them back according to the list and say, you are now welcome to come in, please bring your parents, we're going to have an intake meeting on this day, and we follow the process on down the line.
So we don't know if those from last time have been, you know, are on the waiting list or have been placed?
I do. I have one person that had contacted from several weeks ago. I can't discuss that young man's name, but that was the only person that contacted me of those students that were expelled. And then I just await for the new students to that have been to contact us and let us know that they're looking for placement in the program.
Okay,
Can you
so,
talk-
Oh, sorry.
so tonight we also have 8 ninth graders, and you have no spots for ninth graders. So
So-
they go on a waiting list and, you know, along with the ones that,
Yes, and what will happen is that the second semester, when they contact me, those are the kids that we start bringing in right away at second semester. So assuming they contact me, they start coming in right away according to what that is. Yes, ma'am.
okay, but you said if they don't contact you, then you contact them.
Sometimes we do, yes, we do. And because I have a list of students already on the wait list. So I'm really hoping that they follow through on that board action that states the responsibility is for that student and that family to contact us within that time frame to reserve a spot for them in that next incoming class, I guess you would say.
Would you talk about the scheduling? For example, we had a discussion about this earlier. So right now it shows that like there are 9 openings in 12th grade. But can you talk about the schedules, the teacher schedules, how the teachers teach on both the safe
Yes,
school
ma'am.
side and the alternative side? And so it doesn't mean that I, as a 12th grade teacher, only has one student that I'm teaching throughout the day.
Right, that is correct. We have a staff that teaches in both programs, the contemporary program and the safe school program, so they are balanced between the 2 floors as best as they possibly can. And the schedule is really set up for the students that are currently there. If we have seniors, then we have a teacher available for that particular person or for those students. And those students, those teachers are actually, if they're not needed for safe school seniors, they are teaching high school contemporary seniors. So it's not that they're standing around waiting for seniors. They're in another class teaching seniors of that. So to say that that's available, correct, then the schedule would have to be reconfigured to be able to allot for that teacher or a teacher to be able to get them. Yes, ma'am.
So who's teaching that one student? They're in with the other students from the other side? That one
No,
student that's
no,
in
no,
12th
no, no,
grade?
no.
Who's
The safe school and the contemporary school are separated on floors.
So who's teaching that one 12th grade student?
That one 12th grade student is with a teacher who has that student for a morning class, because he's the only one that we have at that point, because he's the only one that has those senior needs. So that's who it is. I don't know if I answered it.
Too much detail, so we'll make sure we have to be very careful about
Yeah.
confidentiality.
We're not asking for students' names, though.
Right, but I'm gonna get there to your answer. So I have a schedule. And so first period, if there's only one senior that has a first period English 4 class.
Right.
So that teacher's working with that particular student for first period.
Could be, yes,
Could
yes,
be.
yep.
And
Because he's safe school, he cannot go to a contemporary
Right,
program
that's what we need
to get the senior level English if that was being offered at that exact same time.
explain why we have we're separated the both programs.
Because we have students that have been expelled from their traditional school to be here. We don't combine the 2 programs as we are having our contemporary program that we're trying to grow as an alternative for our students in the district, as well as we have the safe school students that have been expelled from their school that are taught with the staff that we have.
So if I could just explain, I always like to explain what we're doing at our school, because nobody else in the country is doing what we're doing. We have 3 schools. We have 3 separate schools. We don't have, for instance, a dedicated contemporary, which is used to be known as the alternative school. They have to go back and forth. The alternative school is a 6 through 12 program in which students need to apply. They need to apply, they need to fit what we're trying to do, which is offer students who, for lack of a better word, are not comfortable in a large school setting. And so those students are taught on the second floor. The safe school students, now remember, we gather safe school students from across the county. It is not just Peoria, it is all county schools can come to the safe school. Those students are housed on the 3rd floor. And those students are kept separate from the contemporary students. That's one of the things that we tell our contemporary parents, that if you come to the contemporary school, you will not be exposed to the safe school students. And that's really important. We're trying to serve 3 different, of course, the third one is the Career and Technical Center. So I think it's very important, and that's also hard for a lot of people to sort of get their mind wrapped around what we're doing at Woodruff. 3 very distinct programs, and we think we do a good job of educating both, or all 3.
Okay. For the safe school, there are dedicated number of classrooms?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What is the maximum number of students that you can take within the safe school?
Well, it's 10 per grade level, or per class, excuse me, 10 per class.
So 70 kids, 6 through 12?
Could be. It could be, depending upon if there are openings. Yeah, right. If in a perfect world, it would be, right, 10 and 6, 10 and,
Okay.
exactly, yeah.
I guess my concern would be, for whatever reason, there are children that are expelled that have not received a number of suspensions. They have done something, correct?
Like a single incident, sure.
Incident.
Sure.
Got caught.
Brought drugs to school, or,
Those things,
right,
those things
right,
do happen.
right.
When this child comes to the safe school and they have completed their expulsion term.
Right.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what else happens if they are not, if they don't create a problem, they do everything that they're supposed to do.
Right.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what all happens while they're in this safe school. I know you said is it only counseling if they are acting out, or do they go have counseling throughout the term? What is the process? What happens? Once they come to the safe school, what happens?
Well,
With all children, I'm not saying
Right.
extremely, I'm just saying all children that come to the safe school.
Sure.
What's the process?
So when they come in, besides your regular high school offerings, we try to do the best we can with a limited staff. We have counseling. They have counseling every week. They have both individual and group counseling. We have what we call our Warrior Way, which is their intervention moments within Warrior Way also. So it is, we offer more counseling than, I'm guessing, than any other school in the district, because we recognize that the students, any student that we get in there has some sort of issue, even if it's the one incident. I mean, that can be very traumatic. We have, you can separate, if you want, to simplify, you can separate, and I think you've already done that, into students who make that 1 or 2 mistakes. They've made a couple of mistakes, and they end up at the safe school. They come in very rational thinkers. They know what they need to do. They move through our program, and then they go back to the home school. Then we have a smaller group of students who have serious emotional issues. And it's those students that are very difficult to get through our program successfully. What I've learned in my short time there is when I walked in, I thought, well, you're going to do what I tell you to do because that's the right thing, and you're in the safe school, and this is sort of a boot camp. That doesn't work with those students. They don't care about the fact that I'm the principal, for instance. and that if I tell you to do something, that you're going to do it. These students have serious emotional issues, and so they need to be dealt with very differently. But what I did learn is that in the half year to a year, we're not going to fix them. There's no fixing of students who have that sort of problem. We have to deal with them and get them through to the end and work gradually. There's incremental improvement in those students. It is, if you want to think of it, it's really two different programs. And the solutions for students who have serious emotional problems, that's not easy. And we do have all that counseling there, and we have layers. We have, again, probably per capita more, per student, more counseling than any other school. But those, say, 15 to 20 students, it's a struggle.
And for those 15 or 20 students, first I want to address those. How much involvement, how much parental involvement is there with those children who have deep emotional issues?
It varies from no involvement to daily involvement with phone calls and very supportive. I think that if you have a child who has deep emotional issues like that, it's exhausting. And so we try to provide parents with an outlet, and we know when we call some of these parents that they don't know what to do either. So it varies. Some are very involved and don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. So essentially that cliche of it takes a village to raise a child is very true within our environment. It's going to take more than the district to reach these issues that we're experiencing. What I hear you saying is that we can only do so much. We just need the help of the community.
That's right.
We need the help of other agencies. Because we've got to try to reach this problem that we're experiencing. And from what I'm gathering is that we can't do it alone.
Right.
I don't know the answer. I know that we need our parents to get involved. Because it starts at home. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I honestly wish I knew an answer, you know.
And there isn't an answer. I think we have the luxury of dealing with these students as individual. I know that if you're coming, say, from Peoria High and there's 1,500 students, that's difficult. But at least when you're in the safe school, you're one of, say, 80 students at the most. And we're able to address those. And we do make progress. And that's satisfying. But we also know that there are some students that will go back, and we're likely going to see them again.
I have another. Let me ask this question, and I'll let you have it. I'm going to switch gears to Mr. Salzman. When a student is expelled from the district for let's just say 2020. The remainder of 2014 and first semester of 2015, which means in January of 2016, they can go back to school. My question is that this child probably has been out of school for a year. What measures do we undertake as administrators in the district to kind of bring this child up to speed? Let's say that when they leave, they're a sophomore. So by the time they come back, they're probably still a sophomore. But what do we do to help that child, bring that child up to speed, so that they can continue to progress as a sophomore and get, get all their credits and things like that. So what are we doing for that child? Or is that child just brought back in, they come back into the school and that's it, you're on your own? That's my question.
They have an option to participate in credit recovery.
Yes.
So we have credit recovery available. Credit recovery is a way for them to recover any credits from failed courses. Then they have their regular schedule. So the credit recovery is for courses that they failed. And then they're back to a full, 7-period day or 7 classes. But they do have the opportunity to recover any lost credits from failures.
Do we identify these students? Are we doing anything to know that student XYZ is coming back to school off of expulsion so that we can kind of take this child and say, hey, this is what's available to you?
We do credit transcript analysis every year, and so the counselors go through and meet with the students, and so we do the credit analyzation to say, here where you are, Ms. Costick, as far as on being on track to graduate. These are the courses that you need to register for. If you fail courses, these are courses you have an option to take through credit recovery. So that's an opportunity available to every child that's in high school, that opportunity to sit down with the counselor. But keep in mind, in fairness to the administrators and the counselors, at the high schools, each counselor has a caseload of about 300 to 400 students. So it's not an ongoing, like you said, Woodruff has that luxury of spending a little bit more time with students. It's not ongoing counseling. It's we sit down and here's your plan, but part of that, the high school level, is from some independence of student and parent working through that plan. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but, and if I haven't captured that correctly, you all need to jump in. You just left a traditional high school, so.
Those students who do attend Woodruff and do finish the time period of their expulsion, they schedule a meeting with the school that they're going to go back to discuss what progress was made or what progress wasn't made at Woodruff so that the regular school is prepared for them.
That's what I was looking for.
Right. That happens for those that are at Woodruff.
That's been in school, but not the ones who have not.
But the ones who choose not to contact Woodruff and get enrolled at Woodruff.
To school.
Correct.
They get they still have to register for classes. And so when they get ready to register for their classes, they look at that transcript to see how many credits they have, so they'll know what courses to place them in when they return.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Crawford.
For the children you mentioned that have such severe emotional behavior problems that it seems as if they really don't respond to authority figures, what methods do you think could help them out? What could we be doing as a district, or thinking beyond the district, what could the state be doing to help reach those kids that right now you've told us we're only making incremental progress with by the time they leave us?
Well, one of the things is patience, because it's not going to happen right away. And we have ideas. One of the ideas would be if you're coming to Woodruff and you're going to accept our program, perhaps we put aside, and this is just things that we've thought about, you put aside the fact that you're going to move on to the next grade. You're going to come in and we're going to work on those particular problems that got you here. I think as long as those, again, for those students who are emotionally disturbed and to mentally disabled, I think that the content needs to be pushed aside. And that's sort of what we do kind of on the fly at Woodruff. I'll tell the teachers, if they're not ready to learn, there's no point in teaching history at this point. You need to deal with exactly the issues that are in there. And that's the point where we will send students out to meet with counselors and get counseling done. But the answers aren't easy. And I think that addressing their specific emotional issues so that they can then be ready to learn. If they're not ready to learn and they have all sorts of anger, then what's the point?
Tough to accomplish in a 6.5 to 7 hour school day.
True, and that's true. Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? You mentioned the Safe School is available to students countywide. how many students do we have at Woodruff that are from schools outside District 150? And number two, can you speak to the funding mechanism of that? Does the funding follow the student from the district?
Yeah, no,
It's
that's state. We have a grant that we're given. I'm not sure the amount on that. It's not a lot.
And just, can I finish up, I'm sorry, Rick, just finish up with a comment for my questions. Given the fact the county's involved, and given the intensive instruction you're talking about, I really think it's worth looking into county-wide, municipality-wide, an educational system that grabs some of these kids, not only for the benefit of our students that are in traditional schools and stuff like that, but also for the benefit for our most challenging of children, that they need education beyond 6.5, 7 hours a day is what you're telling me. They need full-time, almost. I agree with you. I think getting to the point where they believe in the idea of learning, such that they're not going to squander that opportunity is the key. And going forward, I think that ought to be part of a strategic plan, and I think it ought to be part of what we're telling the legislature to maybe think about, because we're not the only school district facing this.
Not at all. Yeah, right. A lot of safe schools in
the state of Illinois.
Right.
How many do we
Oh,
have?
there's tons.
No, how many do we have from out of Peoria?
Well, they moved into the district, so I don't know if that counts. We had, right now, initially, we had one that, but then they moved to Peoria, so I don't know if that's how that counts or not, but at the time, it was just the one, so.
One high school student.
One high
Mr.
school
Cloyd,
student.
and then Mrs. Ross.
Yes, thank you. Sounds like we obviously have an unmet need, and the question is, can the school at Woodruff in its various forms be scaled up to start to meet that need, and at some point, does the scaling up of that walk completely against what you're trying to accomplish based on it's too big?
Right, yeah.
So I guess there's two parts to that. One is, assuming we have the physical space in that building, which I think we might come close to having.
We're just about at capacity.
You're at capacity?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one issue.
And the Career and Technical Center continues to grow too.
Okay, then that means maybe we need to find some other alternatives, because maybe there's other places we could do some of that.
At this point, we can house them, but yeah, I'm hoping that the Career and Technical Center and the Contemporary just explode.
And maybe there's, well.
Not literally.
But,
Wait a minute.
yeah, wrong term.
Expand.
Yeah, wrong term. Grow rapidly is the term you use, sir.
Mr. Bloomer, though, would you address the part of his question, and I've heard you speak to this, of why we can't just, even if we had the room, why it would not work just to expand and take on a whole lot more students in the safe school?
Sure, and you alluded to that, and we can't get too big, because then we lose our advantage of having small class sizes. In particular, the supports that we have right now, and we talk about counseling and social workers being able to address the needs of our students. If we get so big, we're going to need more counselors to be effective, and more social workers, and more support staff, and more teachers.
So my thought would be that as we go into the strategic planning process, maybe one of the things that we could ask you to do would be, what is the ideal set of resources, whether it's there at Woodruff or someplace else, to meet this need across the district, thinking outside the boundaries of the particular system as it sits today, so that we look at this in a much longer perspective than next week or next month or next year. I think that would be very helpful. If you have some thoughts on that, I think that would be appreciated input. Sure. I have one last question, and that is, what about students returning to the school district from the criminal justice system? Where do they go?
Well, it depends. I mean, if they're still expelled, they would probably come to us. Their expulsionary period may be that they're still expelled, and they come back and they return to our building. If their expulsionary period has been completed, even while they were incarcerated, they're still receiving schooling while they're there. And we're talking about juveniles, correct?
Right.
Okay. So the juveniles are receiving education through Limestone if it's here in Peoria County. And so those grades will be entered. But if their expulsionary period has been completed, then they would return to their school with the grades inputted into that they received. If their expulsionary period isn't over, then they would come to us until their time was completed.
And I'm just guessing that coming straight out of the criminal justice system, whether or not you've taken your classes, and going right back into your home school is probably a less than ideal transition, and I would think that would be a
It
problem.
depends on their age. We're talking about, if you're talking about middle school, K-8,
Yep,
they're back in their home schools. Their high school, they go to the Knoxville Center.
Yeah.
okay.
And there used to be a program, a step-down program years ago that was grant-funded, that any students at the high school age would coming back would go there first. And it was sort of but that funding was taken away several years ago, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Ross?
Yeah, I want, this is a passion, close to my heart when it comes to losing students out in the system, no matter what they've done. I mean, short of murder or something of that nature. First, I want to ask, how do you determine, because I heard you mention, Mr. Bloomer, that these students come with severe emotional and mental problems. Do you do that evaluation to determine that, or, because if they already have that label, then they would probably be special ed, or how do you determine their severe emotional and mental problems?
Some of them are special ed.
Okay.
And if they've been officially identified as such, yes, and we have those services
Yeah, I'm
at the
familiar
school.
with the special ed, but I mean, all the others that are on our list that are not special ed.
Some are in the state, going through the process though.
Yeah.
They're in the process of being evaluated. So there's a possibility that they're in that process, but something happened during the evaluation where they, was an expellable offense.
But my question is, do you do that determination to evaluate them, to get them that label of severe emotional?
Absolutely, yes. We begin, when you say me, I mean our staff. I mean, we'll begin that process if they haven't been identified already and we're seeing behaviors that make us feel or think that they should get evaluated, we'll begin that process.
Okay, and the fact that we have this waiting list, and have you identified a need to, like, if you've got 10 kids on the waiting list for a particular class, have you expressed the need to have another classroom teacher? Or, I mean, suppose they don't get in and there are no openings for second semester, where would they go? You mean, the ones that are there now, where would they go to make room? Back to their home school, or they finish up, or?
Right, so, I don't know what percentage of turnover we'll have in January. We'll have many openings at the end of the first semester. Most of our students will go back to their home schools, and that will open up. So anybody on the waiting list, I would imagine, right now, will be able to enter into Woodruff. Second semester.
I just, I get very upset reading all these expulsions, and when I look at the grades that the kids have, they're all failing.
Yes.
Already,
Yep.
they're
Yep.
all failing. I mean, they get D's and F's, and almost all of them are failing. They're already behind, so I'm wondering, what is it? It's kind of like a, holding cell, so to speak. What are we going to do with them over and above what's already been done at the regular school?
Well, I mean, when they come to Woodruff, well,
You explain the process and what they would get, I understand that. But I just wonder, what happens to the ones that they never get called or they don't call in?
Well, I think, I'm going to speak to two parts of that question. The first part is, what happens when they come to us with Ds and Fs? Well, for many of the students with the smaller class sizes that we have and the attention that we can give the students, they find success. I've had students tell me, I wasn't doing very well in science, I've never liked it, but I've got a B in it right now. I said, well, good for you. I said, and what do you think that's attributed to? I said, well, the teacher likes me, plus it's a smaller class. I said, bingo. How about your attitude about it? Oh, it's getting better. I said, fantastic. So the smaller class size and the ability for them to have more of an individual attention allows them to be successful. So that after they come in, let's say in the first 9 weeks that they've been expelled, second 9 weeks they're pulling in a B for the grading period and a C or B for the final, erases that first grade period F. Now, with the high school kids, it's all about credits, and we talk about that with them all the time. Your job is to get as many credits as you can within the next 4 years to be
Most
able
of
to
these are
complete.
high school
Yes,
students
ma'am.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, so, the kids who never get in, you know, they will, that never call us and never take the initiative to do that.
Or they
you know,
remain on the waiting
Or they
list.
remain on the waiting list, you know, when their time comes up, they go. But like I said, you know, we have a limited amount of space per class, and I think the kids who are there that do take advantage of that appreciate the fact that they've got someone in there that's willing to help them be successful. Right. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting that many of our successful safe school students, when they realize what a small class size can do, and with all the interventions that we have, petition to go over to the contemporary school afterwards, after their expulsion period. And we have a lot of successful students moving over to the contemporary and flourishing there.
After their
And they are, it is not a small sacrifice. If you're coming to Woodruff and even the contemporary, you're giving up the sports and the clubs. I mean, we're not able to offer those things, but they realize, one, the power of education. I mean, they see it make a difference in their lives, and that's very important to us. And they realize how important it is, too, because maybe for the first time, they've been successful.
Thank you.
You know, if they were getting DNFs, though, they weren't in sports anyway.
Should have been.
So,
Well, but although, having said that, I need to get that plug for contemporary. You can be in sports at your home school. So if you're a contemporary student and say you're from Richwoods and you like that small class size, so you prefer, you can go back and play football, or you can be in clubs over there. And so we really push that. We've had some athletes. We've had some Central football players and wrestlers and stay with us, and then after school they go back to their home school.
Reverend Butler.
Yes, earlier Mr. Cloyd mentioned about some of the students displaying behaviors to get what they want in terms of getting suspended. I've often heard also students who've heard about how good or how great it is to be in the safe school and the other things that go on at Woodruff, that that's sometimes the motivation too, is to get to your school. And I know we've had conversations where there have been some who said, I want to stay. And I think it'd be helpful to look at that as well as you talk about your success rate and things that you're doing, that many of these students finally find where they fit. And so as we talk about students getting there and the issues that lead to that, what about the students who get there and find out what they want, and now they have to go back to that which contributed to their earlier problems?
Well, and we tell them this, so they'll come to us and say, you know, I'd like to go over to the contemporary side of the building. And it's very simple, behave. Behave, that's all. Do what you're supposed to do. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to behave. And if they do that, we'll bring them over. What we don't want at the contemporary school is we want people to feel safe. And some of our students have been bullied, and now they have a place to be, and we want to make sure that that is a safe place for the students who don't fit in otherwise in other schools. So students who come over who are with us in the safe school, if they behave, very simply, that's it. We'll seriously consider, and we have had many students come over to us.
And that's what you meant earlier when you said you were hoping that that school would explode.
Exactly, yeah.
Expand.
Expand. We're going with expand. But, so what we're looking at is possibly then, as the safe school has the outcomes that we're looking for, then that means the contemporary school then must be looked at in terms of what more it can do or be available to those students. So I just wanted to track that through as we ask what happens to those students.
Sure.
Or even now knowing there are some students who would hope to get there because they feel that's where they fit, as you mentioned, the bullying issue and all those things like that, that they're looking for a place like that to go. And if it means maybe I have to be suspended or expelled, then they will do that. Mr. Saltzman, I think this question is asked year after year when it comes to the discipline issues. Again, we see where the African-American male stands out in these statistics. I guess I'm wondering, and for you also, Dr. Lathan, are we looking at that particular population, what those issues and needs are, and somehow addressing it through our education program? As we mentioned earlier, so much that's going on in the 10th grade, and we saw from the data where a lot of that is starting in the 7th and 8th grade on into the 9th and the 10th. And like I said, it just really stood out again. What are we doing? We ask that in general, by the general population, but we have a particular population where there are struggles and there are needs. How are we addressing that through our discipline program or looking at some things that can help?
And that was combined together for African Americans. There was male and, so for African Americans, it was male and female combined together.
He
Right.
separated them out, though.
And then it went on to say about the males, so maybe it's, I mean, it seems as though you can put that together and realize kind of, you know, what's going on again, even where largely the African-American population reside, and there are issues there that stand out with those particular schools. So I'm just wondering, I guess the question would be, is it wrong to look at that data and conclude that there's major issues with the African-American male in our middle and high schools?
Okay, it's not on here. It's not broken down like that. That's why I want to make sure we talk about the same page.
Okay.
On, there's male, it's broken down by male and female, and then African-American male and female together. So that 1136.
So then, let me rephrase this. We have a particular population by race where there are some issues. What's going on in our educational program to address where it seems like we have a particular group by race that largely documented in these statistics for discipline. So I'll just broaden that.
So several things. Number one, when each school looks at their data, they do look at it based on, let's say, subgroups. But we also have to take in comparison that African-American students are the largest population of students that we have in the district. So when you start looking at the data, you have to first break out, okay, African-American students, let's say, represent 64%. What of the 64%, how many are being suspended when you compare that to their other peers and have smaller percentages in the other subgroups? But each school is supposed to look at that data. They look at it by males and females, a lot of times focusing on that, and then what time of day are those different behaviors occurring, and then they look at plans around it. So is it during the change of classes? Is it in the cafeteria? And then they start working on ways to do that. They talk with the teachers about those write-ups in the class. One of the conversations that we have is when you decide to suspend a student, it needs to be fair and across the board. So if we have something that occurs, and then both of us should receive the same consequence. It shouldn't be something on me because I'm African American. Her consequence should be different because she's Caucasian. So we do hold those conversations, but to drill it down further, because we have not pulled it out like that, but we would need to pull it out based on the percentages. But our conversations are across the board. What are we doing in the schools to make sure we're being fair and consistent? And then drilling it down to looking at practices, behaviors for teachers and principals or assistant principals.
And I guess I'm just wondering, again, with the data, do we see one particular subgroup that?
Well, you're gonna see the subgroup to be African American because that's the largest subgroup.
Right.
So if there's no way, I mean, that it would be in the reverse. So that's always gonna be, right now, the subgroup that's gonna stand out because it's the largest population. But overall, do we have some things where, for example, insubordination is a good example. Sometimes you might find, and I'm just speaking in general, I know somebody will take it and chop it up later. There are sometimes people can take insubordination in a different way. For example, students who are responsible for taking care of the household, let's say getting siblings together. So you might have a fifth grader that's taking care of being in charge of the house. So they come to school sometimes and they're trying to be in charge of the classroom, and they might say to the teacher whatever. And I can recall when I was a principal, I'd tell my students, when you're here, you're the child. We're the adults, we're gonna work with you, but I don't need you, you're off duty. That's what I would tell my students when they walk in the door, all right, you're off duty. And so sometimes I think we still need to work on cultural things and
That's
comments
where
that
I'm
we
going.
make. Right, but that could be any culture. It doesn't necessarily have to be as it relates to African American culture. For example, how people address you, looking at you in the face, you know, eye to eye. So those are conversations, but it's conversations we need to have across the entire district with all staff. So those are conversations that we start. We talked about this last week. We had crisis prevention intervention training for our principals, and one of the things that one of our trainers, who's an in-house trainer, shared is we still need to work on more positive interactions across the entire district. Right. And one of the questions that I asked him, I said, are you saying this though when you go out to schools? You're still telling us as administrators in the district, but are you saying this also to teachers and the teachers' assistants? And he said yes, because that's still one of the concerns is. And it goes back to relationships. They can tell you some of the hardest and toughest students, if you have that relationship with them, you can discipline them. But it goes back to helping teachers and principals understand how you have to develop those relationships.
And I guess looking at that, I just wanted to be for sure, because I appreciate, as you say, across the board, we're looking at everyone and trying to help them. And also keeping in mind what our district looks like in terms of the largest group being African American. So, but there are some things that are culturally related that if the understanding isn't there,
right,
in working with that largest population, perhaps it can lend itself to the data that we're seeing. So is there any way of taking that in consideration as we look at what can be done different or done better to take all of that into account for that largest population?
Is analyzing those, one of the examples is analyzing those write-ups, so what the teachers and principals put into the computer about what the offense was and how they describe it, and then deciding if it's, whether school has demerits or if it should be an in-school suspension. I had a conversation with a principal a couple weeks ago about a student writing on the bathroom walls and looking at whether that's a suspension or something should be done in-house, and saying, okay, you're going to go to the extreme, but you need to talk about the steps in between and leading up to that. So we have to get into looking at, we do a lot of grade analysis, so we look at grades, but also analyzing those write-ups that are put in and saying, okay, is this a minor, is it a major? And then, once again, in your classroom, I might be able to just get up and go to the pencil sharpener without raising my hand. Another classroom, you have to raise your hand, so then it's insubordination if you get up. And we always, it's one of those things, choose your battles, and getting teachers to understand that sometimes, and principals, because it's a shared responsibility of understanding how they give out the different infractions, and when there's an infraction, decide on the consequences. I mean, so administering those consequences. It's a conversation, it's gonna be an ongoing conversation, but it's the conversation that's occurred in school districts all across the country. Because we still have a long way to go with getting people to understand how to work with all children.
Thank you, that's where I was going, but know the children we're working with and those issues.
Right, and be willing to understand and have the care and wanting to work with all children.
And I think it is a training thing, because you could have a teacher who grew up in an urban community at an urban high school, himself or herself, and another teacher who grew up in a small town around like Delvin or something, and an urban student could make a statement to that person who's used to being around those type of children, and it will mean nothing. And someone who isn't used to being around those kinds of children, it's insubordination. So that's where it becomes very, very difficult, I think. And especially at the high school level, during the day, you could have 5 different teachers that would take the same statement 5 different ways.
And we have.
And so, you know, that's where the frustration comes in, especially, you know.
I just have a couple of things. I'd like to request a couple of things. I'm not sure, Mr. Salzman, I guess, is the person. I would like to know, is there a way to track and find out how many students that were expelled a year ago, or not just a year ago, but I'm thinking year by year. How many were expelled and how many actually returned after that year? How many returned back to this 150 after that year? And that's, I think that's an important tracking that we need to know, whether we lost them or not. And then also, is there a relationship between you and Mr. I'm sorry.
Mr. Islas.
Yes.
That's okay.
Whatever you said.
You can call me Coach I. That's
okay,
Coach.
Okay, Coach. Is there a relationship where when you submit to them after tonight, so to speak, these are the students that were expelled that should be calling you? And if they haven't called them in 7 days, do you report back to him and say, okay, these are the parents that have not called, and we haven't heard from. I mean, I know there's seven.
It's about a 6:30 conversation every morning, so.
Okay, so you know the ones who haven't called.
No, we don't know that. I don't know that. What my office does, after tonight, tomorrow morning, my secretary will send a letter to every single parent that students expelled or expelled with abeyance. We'll send a certified mail letter, and we'll also have one hand-delivered by our school resource officers. They, in turn, will get a copy of what you have seen earlier tonight, and they will contact each individual who is supposed to be there.
Well, now, that's not what he said. He said that.
That's what I have expected. That
Okay.
they will be contacted by Woodruff.
No, that's not what we have said. Wait a minute. No,
That's
no,
not
no.
what I thought the
That's different than
process
what
is.
we said.
We put that
parents
responsibility on the parent.
Right.
Not on the staff, because they'll spend all day making phone calls.
That's true.
And, no, we said the letter makes it, that's why we do a hand delivery and certified mail, to make sure everyone receives it. They're supposed to make that contact within 7 days. If not, it goes to the next person that's on the waiting list when a space is available.
Right.
But-
Now, is there, in your letter that you sent to parents, is it clear that if they don't even understand what you have written on this paper, that they can call you?
Yes. The top of the letter says, "Notice your child has been expelled," in letters about that big.
Okay, but,
And it also says at the bottom, if you have any questions, you contact my office or you contact Mr. Bloomer.
Yes, the numbers on.
We do about everything we can do to let the parents know what's going on. And yet, we still get certified mail letters back on a daily basis.
which means you have a
Because
wrong
the
address.
parents won't answer the door or won't pick them up at a cost to the district of about $6.50 each one. And the officers, we have one officer who spends at least one day every week. And that's combined because he goes every day.
And they don't take
But-
them from him either?
No, they
Well,
won't.
we have two officers that have to help us out because they're second shift officers. So Officer Meacham, Officer Olson, step up, please, and tell them about the process when you deliver the letters. What happens? Come over so they can hear you to the microphone, please. There are gentlemen that normally do the deliveries because it's normally, and sometimes it's during the day, but most times it's after school.
Yes, I do deliver a lot of these letters. I go to the house, make several attempts, at least try to make 3 attempts to deliver these letters. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they answer. If not, we send them back to the Mr. Salzman or the secretary. We definitely try to make at least 3 attempts on these letters. So sometimes they might have a change of address and not there. But we definitely make 3 attempts on these letters, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the counseling and that for the high school age students and that, which agreeably would take a lot at that age. If you've got that type of emotional issues, it's going to take a lot of counseling to try and turn that person and get them heading in the path we'd like them to head. This evening, as we looked at the disciplinary report, we had a few students in the 1st to 4th grade range. If we're going to make any kind of impact, my fear is that 5 to 8 years from now, we're going to be talking about those same students, and they're going to be facing expulsion or revocation of expulsion, held in abeyance, and they're going to be showing up on your doorsteps. I understand we've got PBIS and that, but what are we doing to identify those kids that have those types of emotional anger issues early, as early as possible, so that we can try and curb this before they get to the point where they're at your doorstep and now we're trying all over again to do something, so.
Maureen, Ms. Langhoff, would you come down and talk about our RTI process?
So
when students are referred, first of all, the supports are given based on what, social emotional supports they need, but in the past few years, you've supported more counselors and social workers for our schools. That is key to meeting some of the emotional, mental health issues that we see in our students. The contracts that we have with Family Corps and Children's Home, and even our own staff, our psychologists and social workers work so hard to make sure the social emotional needs are met and identified. We've had several conversations with principals in the past several weeks with some really troubled students who need that mental health support, and we're trying to get those families to sign consent so they can be seen. It's really building those relationships and making sure we have the support in place. But I really think we've come a long way in meeting the social emotional needs of our kids. We really have. And then the programs we put in, Mr. Bloomer didn't mention directly Y-Try and the 2 social workers they have, and the counselors and the Children's Home and Family. There's several different pieces there.
Are we seeing an increase in these episodes? I mean, even from the podium, we hear from people who are very concerned about discipline in the schools, and continue to raise that as a concern.
It seems that the social emotional needs of younger students it's on the rise. It seems, at central office, when we talk to principals and we talk to concerned family members, there's a lot of young kids that need this support, where it's just, they're not getting that support that they need at home, or there's so many environmental factors that we can't control. So we do our best. Some of the social workers that we have, like Harrison and Glen Oak, they've done some amazing things, starting those social emotional groups. We're teaching different children, and different children need different things. So I do feel like we've come a long way in that. You talk about long-term, how we're going to solve all those kids, with help from outside community resources. We've got a long way to go.
So for all the programs, and I'll throw PBIS in there as one of our programs that we're using to address discipline, are the efficacy of those programs reflected in the numbers here? Because the numbers I see kind of change. And I know, I'm giving you an opportunity to answer that question, because I think a lot of people out there probably have that question.
We'd have to go back school by school and really problem solve school by school. I work very closely with Mr. Salzman and the instructional improvement officers daily on issues per school. We'd have to look at what's going on in each school, what if PBIS, procedures are in place, what tiered interventions are in place. It's expected that we have tiered interventions in place to address not only academic but social emotional needs. So we just had a conversation today about, so this child's seeing the Children's Home therapist, but what documentation do you have that the teacher knows what goals that therapist is working on? So there's so many little details, and I feel like we're peeling away those layers, layer after layer. When you look at data, we'd really have to go school by school.
And I'll just add that if we weren't doing this, it might be far worse.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of how I look at it, is that you talked about how the needs for the, the social and emotional needs of our children seems to be worsening as they come into our schools. Well, that is, again, is something you alluded to. We have no control over that. That is something outside the power of the school district. So
we have our children for this small piece of the day, and even when we talk about the rates of teen pregnancies and STIs, it's a different problem, but it's something we don't have total control over, and we do as much as we can and put as many resources in place to try to change that data to make kids more successful. But we've come a long way in making sure this administration has supported that. The board has supported more social emotional support, and that is going to continue to be a need.
And it's still a concern. Let's just go to the Glen Oak and Harrison prime example. We're talking almost 800 students, one social worker, one counselor. We still need more. And
We
some
do.
schools, our primary schools, we don't have necessarily a social worker, but every school, and we started talking about priorities, but we have to talk about how we fund those. Every school needs a counselor and a social worker at minimum. Then you need to add based on the number of students and based on the different social emotional supports. We're not there, we've started, and our original goal was to add additional counselors and social workers each year. We kind of, been in a holding pattern the past 2 years as relates to funding, but it's so, and that's why we kind of have like a hybrid of different support services based on those needs that we have to, because people, like Family Corps is an agency that also receives funding from the United Way, so that we take our piece and put their piece together, we're able to get those supports. Children's Home, they write grants, and so we put all those pieces together. But we also use some of our special education dollars, so we're using different combinations. But there are more issues that we need to be able to address, once again, so children are ready to learn. But we have to deal with those social emotional pieces first.
Just one quick question. Maureen, I think I'm going to address this to you. Maybe you could help me on this. One of the things that we're definitely noticing is the drop in the grades of children from 7th and 8th grade, and once they start as a freshman, that's when you're noticing a dramatic drop in their grades. Are there any specialized programs or anything that we can do to address these freshmen to kind of help them along with this transition, to make things a little bit easier for them? Maybe some of the frustration and things that we see is as a result of that transition and not knowing what's going on and how to get there, where they're going and how to get there. So I guess what I'm asking is that, is there anything that can be done? Are there any programs in place where we gear it towards these kids that are making that transition?
Ravonda may be able to assist with this response too, but a lot of it has to do with the transitioning between the middle school principals to the high schools.
Didn't we have some programs like Rising Ninth Graders at some of the schools?
We do have, we do a freshman, most of the schools, 2 of the schools have a freshman academy. Richwoods does not. They do keep they have a freshman hallway in the 400 hallway. Peoria High and Manual both have a freshman academy, so that keeps it smaller. It keeps them from running around and experiencing the freedoms that a 10th through 12th grader has, because as you transition from middle to high school, they sort of need to ease into it. We also bring the kids over so that they can see what it's like in the high school. We talk to them. They've already started with the 8th graders. Actually, they start with the 7th graders talking about how it doesn't matter that you could be 18. It's all about the credit. So just because, you don't move on because you're big and you've passed ages, so somebody's just going to pass you on. You've got to earn those credits to be able to move forward. So we talk about those, and we talk about study tables, getting that extra help. Each summer, we do a freshman orientation at each one of the high schools where we bring those folks in, the kids in, to walk them through a schedule. They actually have kids that sit and talk to them and say, if you make those poor choices early on, this is what's going to happen to you. So they have kids who've excelled. Yes, correct. Each one of the high schools is also establishing like a student council body that kind of takes on that initiative to help mentor those freshmen. We also have freshman seminar courses that help with the study skills for kids that need that extra support to be able to help. For kids that are in our AVID program, they're learning those study skills. They're also getting that extra tutoring help they need to be supported. So we do quite a bit for our 9th graders.
And don't the high school principals go out and talk to all of the 8th graders about what the expectations are when they get into their building?
Oh, yes.
I particularly heard that Mr. Elliott does a great job of scaring the crap out of the 8th graders, because it is different in high school and the expectations are different, so.
Go to the middle schools, and then the middle school
Right.
students actually have a chance in the spring to visit the high schools.
Okay.
The little 8th graders do.
Because we do see that there is a large number of 9th graders that are having discipline problems. That was the reason for my question, how they ease into it. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Bloomer, I had one thing I've heard you address this philosophy. We sometimes talk about we struggle with having to put children on the street. Would you please talk about your philosophy about repeaters at Woodruff and what they take away from other students who might need that slot, like students who get expelled from Woodruff or have been at Woodruff, as far as bringing them back, and what that takes away from students who haven't been there?
Right, so we talk about that waiting list. We'll have students who will be deemed unsuccessful, and so they'll be asked to return to Woodruff. Well, if they're coming back to Woodruff, then they're taking a spot of someone who hasn't had that opportunity to come to the safe school and learn. And some of these students are sort of on a continual track because they're not deemed unsuccessful. But those are the same students who, when I talked to earlier, the definition of success has to be really looked at. Success for somebody may be just making it to the very end. And so that's something that has changed. Again, I mentioned it earlier. If you're going to be successful, I thought, you need to make it and you need to follow our rules, on and on it goes. And there are some kids that simply can't do that. So is that where you wanted me to go with that? Yeah.
I think the only other comment I have is, obviously, the number of children that get suspended and expelled are a small percentage of our total population. And they need the extra support and extra help. But I don't want us to forget the rest of the kids out there that want to be in class every day and want to learn in a traditional setting. And I understand it's very difficult to expel or suspend some of these children, especially if we don't have a place for them to go. But we have to remember those students who want to be there and learn, and how they are entitled to an education that is not disrupted by the students who are either having all these problems or don't want to be there. Let's face it, there are some kids who don't want to be there. And I don't want us, as important as it is to keep all of our children in school, we cannot forget about those kids, the majority of the kids who are there every day and want to learn. And we have to be advocates for them also. And I think that's where I get a lot of the concerns that I get from parents is, why does my child have to put up with this kind of behavior, and the teacher spends half the day on this one or two students and my child is losing out because of that? So, and it's got to be part of as we move forward with our strategic plan, if we have to find other programs, other ways to deal with these children in a different setting, we've got to make it safe and a good learning environment for the children who want to be there every day. Mr. Salzman, did you want to say something?
On that same note, if you take the suspensions that occurred the first 9 weeks, and we take for granted that kids make mistakes, so they might get suspended one time, we have then 2% of our population that receive 2 or more suspensions. So we are succeeding for the most part.
Can you just, from the administrators, just to kind of hit on, because for some reason, people will walk away and still think that you can't suspend students or you've received a directive from Wisconsin Avenue. Can we just talk about what you as administrators have been told as it relates to discipline of students?
We have never been told not to suspend. Never. We're told to do it right, certainly, when it comes to that, but never have we been told. We've been entrusted to run our building, and
But explain do it right means. Not you. You're not in the building.
I mean, do it right as far as students and discipline and how we have a series of interventions. We're never firing students out the building without having done everything we can before that. I mean, some incidents step right up and they're obvious. But most of the time, we're working with students, and a lot of the time, it is the same students, and so we know who we're dealing with. But the discipline is there. In every school, there are layers of discipline, and we go through all of those, and suspensions
are the last resort a lot of the times, and we understand that that's a failure. That is a failure on all of our parts when we have, on all of us, when we have to suspend. I mean, that isn't something that we want to do, so.
I'm going to make one more comment.
Okay.
And then I'm done with this issue, rather. And I want to make sure that is extremely clear that in no way have I ever advocated for kids to stay in the classroom disrupting other kids. I don't think that's fair to the kids that do want to learn and that are there to learn. But I feel that it's a responsibility not just of the school district, but of the community and of everyone to do whatever it is we need to do or within our power to not lose a single student. Sure, it's a small amount of expelled. Tonight is 22. Last time it was 15. Just if you look at that over a year's time, that's a number of students. We don't know whether we caught them in the net or not because we don't have the documentation to say, okay, what happened to them? So I think every student is important, whether we want to blame the parents or blame somebody. We either pay now or we pay later. And so we can take an attitude that, well, it's not our responsibility, but we've got to do something. But we do not need to have anyone disrupt the education of the children that are ready to learn and want to learn. But I do think we have a responsibility to figure out how to do the best we can to save these students. Many of us in this audience, I can attest to, especially to myself, that somebody took a look at me and said, okay, I'm going to give you a second chance. I was never a bad student, but many of the people in this audience, had it not been for a coach or somebody who took a look at them and say, okay, you know what, you've done some really bad things, but I'm going to give you another chance, or I'm going to mentor you or help you. That's all I'm saying, is that it just should never be, oh, well, it's just a small amount of students. That small amount grows. And then I wonder, a lot of the students I saw expelled 10 years ago, half of them are dead, or the rest are in prison. You read about them all the time. Their last names, you know who they are. And so I'm just tired of losing human beings, no matter what kind of flaws they have. So that's my statement.
One more thing, Mr. Boomer, you know what? You said something that was very, 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 very close, dear to me. You said that when a student comes in, and I'm not sure your exact words, and they're having social or emotional problems, and in the morning, and if they're not ready, then you take those extra steps, because if they're not ready at that point and they're angry, they're not going to concentrate. So you try to resolve that issue, what's going on with you, to get that to a level where that child is ready to learn. And I commend you, because that there is such a need for that. I love it because you're understanding. So thank you for that passion.
Well, and that's a great staff, too. And that's a staff that we build, administrative staff, and then teachers, and the hall monitors, and the custodians is...
Well, let me rephrase that. Thank you all, the whole staff.
Thank you. And can I... Ms. Patty Avery is the assistant principal for the Contemporary on the Contemporary floor, and Dr. Cindy Janovitz over there and she's the assistant principal for Career and Technical Center. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, especially staff, for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to our District 150 Strategic Plan Update Process Discussion. In your packets, you had a memo from me over the weekend, as we've been discussing at the last meeting, going out and doing individual presentations on where the district is at on some of these issues. We found out last week that the chamber is going to do a State of the District address again. And so the thought came to us that perhaps that is an easier way to reach a broader audience rather than going out and doing individual presentations, that Dr. Lathan could use, what she usually does is give an update of where we're at on different issues. She could use the things we're talking about, looking at for the strategic plan. If after that event, we feel like we didn't, there's a certain group we didn't hit, we could still go out and do a few of those, but it just seemed like that might be a great way to reach a broader audience than just, and most of the groups I think we're going to target as far as the governmental bodies and the chamber and different community agencies, a lot of times are a part of that. So that's why I sent the email and just wanted to see where you guys thought, if you thought that was a good idea to do that rather than, the other thing too is a lot of those governmental bodies or boards only meet once in December, so it's going to be really tough to hit all of them in December, and this might be an opportunity to do this, and perhaps if we felt like we need to send out more information to some of them, or I think we intend to do some special invitations to come to some of the community sessions to some of those groups, so I just wanted to see how the board felt about using that instead of going out and doing the individual presentations.
But there still will be the community meeting starting in January.
Right, right. This doesn't take the place of the community.
Takes the place of
community
announcing
session.
it at city council or county board.
Right. Mr. Cloyd?
Would this be a ticketed event? In other words, admission charged and so forth?
Yes.
Okay.
When we talked about it, we looked at the people who are usually there.
Right.
Because we've done this, 2 or 3 or 4 years. And so that's what we're looking at. This would not be our attempt to talk to the community. Our attempt to talk to the community about this actually is, Mr. Copeland had come up with the idea, this is a draft that you all received, to put that same kind of information, and this would be a mailer that goes to every household. So that's an even broader audience that we would reach before we did the community sessions. It will have all the dates in it and that kind of thing. But even though it's a ticketed event, you'll have chamber people there, which is one of the groups I think we're going to go to. Usually there are city people there, there are other governmental bodies, community agencies usually are there. And so we're not looking at this as being a way to reach the average community member.
And that's fine. I think one of the concerns was that this was done as somewhat of a chamber event, and then there were concerns that there was no real opportunity from a community standpoint for others that didn't care to participate in that fashion to hear the same message. So we need to make sure that that same message is carried to the community, even to the point of maybe having another event afterwards sometime in January where it's a public assembly where you say, we're going to put on the presentation we did for the chamber in December, here it is. That was one of the, I hope you recall, that was some criticism we received last time we did this.
Well,
We talked about going to the high school. We had talked about.
but I think, the thing is, these specific presentations, I thought, were to be to targeted audiences, not the general community. These ones in December, they were going to go out to.
But the invite to the general community.
I understand that.
Right.
That's fine.
And this is going to go to the general community. It's going to have the same information, it's going to have all the dates and all the information about our community sessions.
Okay.
Mr. Crawford?
The last time we did this, it was so widespread, we didn't have any complaints about it.
I think a 5-minute address though before city council is important. Just to basically say, here are going to be our community input dates. We encourage your
And I don't have a problem with that, but at the
constituents,
last
come on out.
meeting, that isn't what we said we were going to do at those sessions. What it was decided at the last meeting was that it was going to be an opportunity to tell those groups where we were on all those items. At the last,
I always had a contemplation.
I know you did, but
it would
at the.
just basically be a meeting
Right.
announcement because.
And that's fine.
No, we had talked about putting together a kind of a where have we been with the last one that would end with, here's our dates, and here's the topics, here's the dates, please,
Right, and
we
then-
encourage your
and I
participation.
think the chamber presentation will be longer just by the nature of the meeting, but I mean, you could do that in city council in 2 minutes.
Well, and that's fine if that's what the intent was, but I came out of the last meeting thinking that wasn't the intent, just to do a 5-minute thing. These are the dates, would you please help spread the word? We can still certainly do those.
And the reason I think it's important is because it's one more area where you're going on public record saying, here's what we're going to do. And I think that, and the fact of the matter is, the city council is open to everyone, even though not everybody pays attention and goes, whereas the chamber is addressing the business community, and I think it's a good forum, but I just think adding the city council piece to make, basically make your announcement is good.
That's
Right.
fine. That's not what I came away from the last meeting thinking.
Right.
I think overall that if we're open to the idea to see how this event goes, see who's participating in that, then kind of circle the wagons, see, did we hit the groups we expected to hit? If not, who did we miss? Who do we need to go talk to? I agree with Mr. Crawford. It's probably still a good idea to take 2-3 minutes and, get in front of the city council one time, even if the majority of them heard it, there are probably a few that won't. And re-present, here's our dates, here's what we're going to be talking about. We strongly encourage your participation.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another good thing about that is the fact that the city council meetings are televised. So you're still going to reach a broader audience saying, hey, this is what's going on.
Okay, but we're still just talking now about
But-
just a 5-minute thing to announce the dates and the places
Right,
and
but
that
you're
kind of
still
thing.
reaching a
Okay.
broader audience, too.
And like I said, we can, after the event, I'm not sure when, it's the first week of December, I think. Is it December 9th? Is that what they were talking? If we feel like we need to do more, we can do that. But this isn't taking the place of anything we're going to ask the community to come to give us input. What do you think about doing a mailer, a community-wide mailer, that will have that information in it as far as the issues the items we talked about considering for the strategic plan and where we're at with them?
Sure.
Is that something you think we need to do or not?
I mean, every household in the district?
Why not?
We've done it before.
I also think there should be an email campaign as well.
Okay.
An email campaign of everyone that we have emailed for. We can do an email, a group session, email campaign. Now, I forgot that. The only thing I would say about this piece is, even though you have numbers for people to call, is there a way to put a document in this packet that could be filled out? Or how would people respond with the comments?
They're coming to those meetings that are advertised right now.
Okay, but if they can't come to those meetings, is there another avenue?
Could we put a
We have info at psd150.org, it's always available.
Yeah, but
every
maybe
day
we
for
should
people to
say
provide
that,
comments.
We'd like them to come to the meeting, but if they cannot make the meeting, their input is important, and we.
Right, over here at
Okay.
the bottom right-hand corner where it says email info@psd150, but we should pull that out a little bit more so people know they can send comments there.
Regarding the strategic.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The other thing we talked at the last meeting about having the community sessions on the off Mondays. We've changed that to the off Tuesdays because there's 2 holidays in there on the off Mondays. One in January and one in February. So we're looking more at the off Tuesdays. And what the plan is to do one at Peoria High, one at Richwoods, one at Manual, and then we will have the 4th wrap-up one probably here at the administration building. Okay? So that sound like a good idea? So we'll do the event with the chamber. We'll see how that goes. We'll plan on getting out to some of these other groups just to do a 5-minute thing that we're doing these community sessions, when we're doing them, where we're doing them, and that kind of thing. Mr. Bateman?
I do like Mr. Cloyd's idea about taking that presentation that we give to the chamber and advertising a public, if you want to hear what we presented to the chamber on this date, come and we'll go over the material just so you can hear what the chamber was provided. That way, everyone gets an opportunity to hear
We always
that.
put it on the, just so you know, it's always on the website.
Sure.
The speech and also the text version.
Right.
Also.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, okay.
Then we'll have the December 15th board meeting to talk about anything that, after that, we just kind of regroup and decide.
Right.
Give us some direction
Right.
for next steps.
Okay. If that's all we have for that for tonight, I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 27th.
So moved.
Are there any changes or comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Costa? Aye. Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
Mr. Bateman?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Cloyd?
Aye.
Mrs. Butler? Abstain. Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye. Thank you. We are now at audience opportunity to address the board. As a reminder, this is a business meeting of the Board of Education held in public, not a public meeting. It is not a question and answer session, and it is not a debate, so there will be no response from the horseshoe unless one of us has comments once the audience comments are completed. Recognizing everyone's First Amendment rights, we still ask that you refrain from speaking about subjects or topics relating directly to district personnel and also those not germane to the Board of Education's authority. We also ask that you refrain from using inappropriate language and keep a civil tone to remarks. Please also keep in mind that just because something can be said does not necessarily mean that it should be said. When you are recognized, please come to the podium and give your name for the record. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. No one under 18 years of age may address the board unless accompanied by a parent, guardian, or a teacher without the consent of the majority of the board. Board members are also available by phone and/or email. This contact information is available on the district website and in the school calendars that parents receive from their school. Kim Jones.
Hello, my name is Kim Jones. I have 2 children in District 150, one in elementary school and one in high school. I know I speak for several District 150 families when I say I'm frustrated with the constant flip-flopping and misdirection of blame from the current District 150 administration. My husband and I are in law enforcement. Our job is to seek the truth. Frankly, we have a hard time finding truth in what the District 150 administration says and does. First, just a year ago, ISAT scores were deemed so important that you took drastic actions against alleged ISAT cheating that disrupted both an entire community and the entire city. ISAT scores seemed important then. ISAT scores were also so important just 1 year ago that Dr. Lathan's board-approved $10,000 bonus was contingent on the district's ISAT performance. Isn't that ironic? Based on the district's dismal scores this year, Dr. Lathan should have to pay us taxpayers back the $10,000 plus interest for failing our children in our community. Luckily for Dr. Lathan, NCLB isn't our standard anymore, so she won't be held accountable for the failing scores. Dr. Lathan can just say, they're not important, and move on. See the contradiction, the lack of truth, where's the accountability? Second, Dr. Lathan has said she is tired of everything being about Charter Oak. Yet when the scores are released, she jumps at the chance to make negative comments about Charter Oak's ISAT scores to the Journal-Star. Of course, she didn't mention any other school, even though they had showed declines in their scores as well. When will enough be enough? To add insult to injury, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Lathan's mouthpiece, Chris Copeland, made inflammatory comments about Charter Oak to the Journal-Star, insinuating that the entire school's test scores were in question last year instead of just a few students' tests. These comments were misleading, mean-spirited, and unnecessary. In fact, didn't District 150's own well-paid attorneys and the ISBE say that there were no testing irregularities in the regular education tests? Dr. Lathan, why would you allow such inflammatory comments that clearly contradict your own report? Is it no wonder that people in Peoria don't believe or trust the administration? Where's the truth? And on the personal level, Dr. Lathan, did you and/or Chris Copeland think for a minute about how Charter Oak's children and teachers would feel about being called cheaters again? None of this is their fault, yet they are being vilified again by this administration and the media. It's heartbreaking. Finally, Dr. Lathan, when Charter Oak parents complained about the chaotic environment of the school and predicted that the scores would be lower because of it, you indicated that a school's environment is irrelevant to a school's performance. Yet isn't that precisely what John Wetterauer was accused of? Not providing a safe and effective environment for testing? With all the changes, new faces, both 100 new kids and new teachers, board member, ISBE strangers monitoring the classrooms, and overall stress at the school last year, how could the students have performed well given the chaos at the school? And then the poor kids and teachers who are excoriated in the media for failing to perform by the very administration that created the chaos in the first place. We need to know, when will the truth be told?
Kathleen Deffenbaugh.
I'm Kathleen Deffenbaugh. I have a grandchild at Mark Bill's, and I have a grandchild at Charter Oak. I'm here tonight. I haven't been here for a couple of months, and I'm here to tell you that nothing's changed in this place. I sit here, and I sat here for 2 hours and watched nothing get accomplished. It's pathetic. To be admonished before you even speak on what you're supposed to say with the freedom of speech, Ms. Wolfmeyer, is ridiculous. That's what freedom of speech is about. We're able to come up here and tell you how we feel you're doing your job because we hired you. Every one of you sitting there, except for Dr. Lathan, was hired by us. Unless somebody's sitting up there shackled against their will. We hired you to do a job, and you're not doing it. The failing grades of the report card for this district is dismal at best. And you sit here every month, every meeting, and pat yourselves on the back on what great job you're doing with a really bad situation. And I'm sorry, but I'm fed up with it to hear. And I know that the fellow constituents in this district are also fed up with it. We didn't hire Dr. Lathan, but in 2010, she said scores were going to increase. Here we are going into 2015, and we have a graduation rate that went from 90% before she was here to 67%. Who up there can say that that is acceptable? What school did you go to where that's acceptable at any level? Somebody has to say the buck stops here and start taking responsibility. You talk about accountability, Dr. Lathan. That's what you held John Wetterauer to, and you fired him, basically. You took him out of a school where children and parents and teachers respected him. You sat here tonight and talked about relationship building and how important it is for these students with emotional and mental problems to have that kind of a relationship with someone in their life. They had that at Charter Oak. It was completely ripped apart, and that school was dismantled. You don't like hearing the truth. You never have. But the truth is there in the report card. When we've got students that are graduating out of our schools that cannot read and cannot write, we have a major problem. I'm sorry. I don't care if they can do hair and they can braid and they can do all these other things. If they can't do the basics when it comes to Common Core math, has any of you sat down and tried to do math with a fifth grader? It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You need to take a look at it. And I graduated. I have a college degree, and I know how to do math. And the way they're teaching these kids to do math today is ridiculous. We need to look at this.
Sharon Cruz.
To distance herself from ISAT scores, Dr. Lathan has stated, "I know we've put the right structures in place and we're going to stay the course." Dr. Lathan has been superintendent for all 4 years that last year's third graders have been in school. What is the proof that this administration has laid the right foundation for their next 9 years? At the last meeting, Lathan showed displeasure and/or discomfort while criticisms about the Reading Mastery program were made from this podium. A consultant from North Carolina has already made over $140,000 and is about to make more to teach teachers how to use Reading Mastery. Please understand why we are inclined to suspect that expensive and even wrong educational choices have been made for very personal reasons. The board minutes show expenditures over $2,500 as information items. Often these expenditures are not reported to you in a timely fashion. What process is used to ensure that each expenditure is within budget guidelines for purpose and cost? Last year, improvements to the admin building included about $31,000 for a camera system, consisting of 13 cameras, 16 camera licenses, and a motion detector. Another $40,000 was spent on equipment for rickets. I'm curious as to the purpose of this equipment, surveillance or security, to watch for interlopers or to watch employees, to protect or to spy. Either your explanation or your unwillingness to explain might be of interest to the public. At the last board meeting, you discussed copy machines, and I believe I heard some questions about how much paper teachers use, maybe even some misgivings about the quantity of paper used. You did not question how much paper is used by administrators. My guess is that no one questioned the $2,100 spent on a new mahogany desk and credentials for the lawyer, and another $630 for a desk and filing cabinets for a front office. About $2,700 was spent to install new carpeting on the second floor. No invoice was provided for the carpeting itself. $9,200 was spent on doors with an electrified panic device. That sounds ominous. Another $233,000 was spent on the roof of the admin building. In 1 year's time, $355,000 was spent on the admin building. When will you make all of last year's expenditures available on the website? The 2013-14 Statement of Affairs is not on the website. And by the way, I think Charter Oak, even with their drop, came in third of the 11 primary schools. Thank you.
Terry Knapp.
Yes, I'd first like to mention the fact minority hiring is abysmal in this district. I just listened to this presentation before, and it smacked of not having role models. We have one Afro-American gentleman in here, Mr. Meacham, tonight, who's a district staff person. I don't think we have any other black males in here. It's always a deficient number of black males who are obviously role models for young black males. Like to mention, every year we've had this. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned this, and you got all over me about how, oh, it's coming down the road, 31st, we're going to have it. Well, right here it is, people, and you simply ignore it. And I want to, going back to this presentation tonight, I want to mention 49.8 and 48.9 at Peoria High and Manual, chronic truants. That's where this is coming from. I mean, you're going to have 49% and 48% at our two major high schools and have chronic truancy out the rear. And then it says graduation rates, prepared for college, I should say. 4.9 at Manual, 13.9 at Central, are ready to go to college. Abysmal. And that's because of this administration has made it abysmal. Allowing things to go on that have gone on in this district, allowing this chronic truancy. What do you expect? It's really outrageous. Last week, Lyle Applegate got up here to talk about reading mastery, and you simply made fun of the woman. It started with Lathan, and it went to a couple board members, and you made fun of the woman. And in this strategic plan, I'll say one of the things it says in here, the public relations image is key. This is 33 people put this together with 300 dog legs underneath them of 300 other people with professionals at the highest level putting this together, and you sit there every week and you try to, you're going to get the Chamber of Commerce. Ooh, the Chamber of Commerce didn't do this. The Board of Education didn't do this. The people of Peoria did this together. 33 people spent thousands of hours doing this, and you just simply ignore it like it doesn't even exist. You know, it's in your office. Get it, look at it, tweak it, and put it back together. You're just spinning your wheels, reinventing the wheel like I said about 2 months ago, doing nothing. Quest, when are you going to get to Quest? Quest is going to go co-op with somebody to play sports. Their company that runs the school runs the curriculum. It's just amazing. You know, their low income status is out of kilt with the district. What else is? Thank you for the time. It's always fun.
Dan DeGaulle.
So like many others, I was sorely disappointed with ISAT scores, and so I started doing a little research for tonight. And I just want to talk about one aspect of student achievement. I started putting this together. I ended up just pulling clips out from a long list of peer-reviewed studies. I'm just going to read off a number of them to you here. As a result of principal churn, students achieve less in both math and reading during the first year after a leader turnover, and schools that experience principal churn year after year realize serious cumulative negative effects on students, a condition that is exacerbated for schools serving underprivileged students. Another quote, principal churn causes student achievement to drop in math and English language arts in the year following the vacancy, and it can take the next principal up to 3 years to regain forward progress for the school. Rapid principal turnover has negative effects on the school, affecting both school culture as well as student achievement. Principals who stay in school tend to be more effective than those who move to other schools. Big surprise there. Principal turnover has a direct negative effect on student achievement. The strongest impact comes immediately after the change in leadership. Leadership changes are particularly harmful for high poverty schools, which is especially relevant now that all of our schools are Title I. Districts should aim to keep most principals in their schools for a minimum of 4 years and preferably 5 to 7 years. A number of other research reports illustrated the high dollar cost of principal churn. One report saying that minimal reduction in principal turnover rates can save the U.S. public school system $160 million annually. In a district like 150, in a district like 150 that is now financially strapped again, the current practice of shuffling principals is not only counterproductive to the student achievement, it's wasteful of district financial resources. So while Dr. Lathan claims that our district must be very wary of complacency and continues to shuffle principals year after year, research shows just the opposite is necessary. We need consistency and reduce principal churn to improve student achievement. You know, when she first arrived, Dr. Lathan accused the previous administration and teachers across the district of educational malpractice. And yet 4 years later, in case after case after case, whether it's principal churn, busing policies, watering down of the curricula, management style, and many other issues, there is what peer-reviewed research shows is effective, and then there's what Dr. Lathan does. And we continue to see the results of what Dr. Lathan does in this year's heartbreaking ISAT scores. The Peoria community deserves better.
Jeff Atkins-Dutro.
Jeff Atkins-Dutro, president of the Peoria Federation of Teachers. I've tried to approach the board directly about the Charter Oak test scandal issue. No pathway I've tried, though, has borne fruit, so here I am at the podium. Throughout last year's ISAT investigation at Charter Oak, teachers who were questioned by the district's attorneys answered all questions honestly and fully. They copied all of their ISAT preparation materials and turned them over to the district's attorneys. They behaved professionally, not talking about the investigation and refraining from going to the press in order to maintain the integrity of the investigation. And for their forthrightness, compliance, and professionalism, they paid a terrible price. Although the State Board of Education determined there was no cheating on the ISAT and not a single teacher's license was revoked, the district turned what could have been a simple matter of tightening up ISAT preparation and ISAT special education protocols district-wide into a scandal that dismantled a school and erupted our community. I drove to Springfield myself and talked to the ISBE. The person with whom I spoke could not fathom why this molehill had been turned into a mountain. At the beginning of the investigation, the Peoria Federation of Teachers was told that the investigation was an effort to oust the principal and that our teachers would not be implicated. We knew better, and we prepared for the worst. Taking the advice of our attorney, we held our cards close to the vest instead of making sensational comments in an effort to go tit for tat with the district and the media. Whereas we played it smart legally and protected our teachers' reputations were smeared time and time again as the district played to the press, going so far as to have a public display via their attorney at a board meeting and by publicly humiliating two of our teachers who were victims of lax ISAT training, not scoundrels who sat in a dimly lighted room changing answers on students' answer sheets. I'm very proud of the teachers for the way they handled themselves, both the teachers involved in the investigation and the teachers who, throughout the process, helped do everything they could to maintain a sense of normalcy for the students at Charter Oak and our other 26 schools. The teachers at Charter Oak met with the union near the end of last year, and their main objective was to get things back on track at the school. The teachers worked hard last year and this year, hoping the dust had finally settled, and then the headline, ISAT scores down sharply at Charter Oak. Certainly anyone familiar with the turmoil last year would have predicted a sharp decline in student achievement to be reflected in the test scores. That said, ironically, the anomalies from the previous year's test scores after a year's worth of scandal, $100,000 in attorney's fees, and upset in staff are still a mystery. There were plenty of scapegoats, but no real answers. I asked the board and the administration to stand up for Charter Oak after the most recent PJ Star article about the school. Had they, this speech would have been unnecessary. I'd like to see the Board of Education, especially those of you who have toured Charter Oak and have seen the teaching and learning going on there, to speak up and come to the schools and our district's defense. Thank you.
Savino Sierra.
Savino Sierra. I'm going to change my subject tonight. I just like to say that we get 3 minutes to talk, and you people were there gum bumping for almost 2 hours, and you didn't come up with anything that I think is really the core of this trouble, that the discipline, the including the dress code. That you said one time, it's only been 4 years. We'll keep going, but I don't think you're going to achieve too much of what I heard tonight. I'm not including our new member of the board there, because he's he don't say too much, but when he talks, I understand what he's saying. And if he's willing, I'd like to meet you one-on-one, and I'll give you some of my thoughts on what's the matter with the discipline that's happening in this district, and it keeps deteriorating. And so this Saturday, I've got a retreat of the police and community relations. And then we have that fundraiser for the East Bluff Community Center that Glen Oak School wouldn't let us put our community center there, you know. I'm from the south side, but I'm interested in all the city of Peoria. I visit the schools, and I look at the upkeep that they've neglected a lot too. And I want to thank you for praising our ROTC down there at Manual. I wasn't able to be there because I had an important meeting at City Hall. I also belong to the neighborhood associations of the city, so I'm involved in that too. But maybe I can enlighten you on a few things and see what you think about them. And so I tell you, it isn't fair. You give us 3 minutes, and you people taking almost 2 hours to, I'd say, talk about nothing too much. And so, but I'm going to let you people go your way, and I'll try to give you some constructive criticisms when I see you getting off the trail. Thank you.
Brenda Wilson.
Good evening, my name is Brenda Wilson. I have been canvassing the neighborhoods around Charter Oak for the past month and talked to dozens of people, and I have yet to meet one person that's happy with the state of the school district. There is a general sense of frustration by every person that I've spoken to in my neighborhood, outside my neighborhood. People are absolutely disappointed in the district and that their tax dollars are paying for kids to fail, to not be ready for college. The truancy rate is embarrassing. The graduation rate is embarrassing. It's not okay, and it's going downhill as we speak. I know of 21 families at Charter Oak that left the district this year, just people that I know. 21 families left the district because of the things that happened at Charter Oak. We've seen a major downturn, obviously, with the latest ISAT results. And I say obviously because how could those scores not have gone down with what happened? And we are trying to be peaceful. We are trying to move forward. It's almost like the fire's almost out. But when we hear a statement like this, it's like gasoline being poured on the fire. It's like you guys want to rev people back up when you say things like, regarding the ISAT scores, this is what justifies the restructuring of school leadership. In a matter of weeks, up to and including the ISAT test, these children lost their principal, which changes the dynamic of the entire school, but they also lost 2 teachers, and I want to say co-teachers because those women taught with other teachers for the kids with the IEPs and special needs, but also the general curriculum children. So those teachers had to redo all of their lesson plans and refigure out the way that they taught the kids, adding in substitute teachers, and the teacher that gets transferred there wasn't trained to do corrective reading. She wasn't trained to do 4th grade math, so she had to go to training. I was a substitute teacher a lot of those days. I got to sub at Charter Oak 28 days from January to May. That never happens. These kids lost their principal, 2 teachers, head custodian, and I want to say mentor there because he was very important to those children. School secretary, she's like a mother to the kids. So principal, 2 teachers, head custodian, school secretary, and a PE teacher. All of those people either felt like they needed to resign because someone was going to transfer them because they felt bullied, or they were transferred for administrative reasons. These are children grieving the loss of people who are not dead. And how could this upheaval in their safe setting? And I hear the word poverty. The tests are bad because of poverty. Give me a break. The kids that are living in poverty and have an unstable home, school is their safe place. They should be able to go to school and have constant faces there that they know and trust. That's how those kids make it. I was one of those kids. School was my safe place. I always knew what to expect there. I didn't know what to expect at home, but I did know what to expect at school. You guys are failing our district, and it needs to stop, and I'm so sick to hear you guys blame Charter Oak. How dare you guys do that?
Thank you. That was your 3 minutes. Do any board members have any comments about the public comments? I would just like to say that I find it very interesting that we get criticized for not having open discussions around the horseshoe, and then when we do have open discussions around the horseshoe, we get criticized that it takes too long. And you may think it was a very boring and unproductive conversation, but I can tell you that we here at the horseshoe ask questions about discipline and about the programs that are going on at Woodruff, and we got information from those people, and that helps us make decisions. So I just find that very interesting. Mr. Crawford?
Just to add to that, many of the questions we ask are to solicit answers for the public's benefit. I mean, I can tell you what my opinions on PBI's efficacy is, but I want to hear it straight from the administrator's mouth. So it's for your benefit that those questions are asked, but if that's what you don't want to hear, then come later when you get a chance to speak.
Okay, that brings us to information items. Purchase orders over $2,500. Are there any questions for Mr. Wilcoxon tonight? Seeing none, report of request under the Freedom of Information Act and the status of such requests.
Since our last board meeting report on October 27th, 2014, we received 4 new Freedom of Information Act requests. Of these new requests, 1 was filled. There were 3 pending requests noted on the October 27th, 2014 board report. 2 were filled. We received 125 requests for this calendar year.
Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. Reverend Butler, would you summarize the gifts to the school district for this evening?
Yes, Mrs. Wolfmeyer, gifts to the district, this meeting total $1,000, which year to date is $17,445.18. The proposed action is that the following donations be accepted and letters of appreciation sent to the donors. The $1,000 donated this meeting involves cosmetology supplies and videos valued at $1,000 by Jamie Benjamin to the WCTC Cosmetology Department. Also, just want to acknowledge donations totaling $6,250 were made to the Peoria Public Schools Foundation.
Thank you. The consent agenda consists of the gifts to the school district, the payment of bills, the human resources report. The proposed action is the appointment, employment, compensation, performance, resignation, retirement, or discharge of an employee, the payment for travel, the parent policies of Title I schools. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the Title I parent involvement policies prepared and submitted by Charter Oak, Franklin, Glen Oak, Harrison, Hines, Jamison, Keller, Lincoln, Northmore, Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, Trewind, Valeska Hinton, Whittier, Woodrow Wilson, Calvin Coolidge, Lindbergh, Mark Bills, Rolling Acres, Sterling, Von Steuben, Manual, Peoria High, and Richwoods. Are there any of those that a board member wants pulled for a separate vote? Could I have a motion and second on the consent agenda?
Second.
Are there any questions? Dr. Lathan, do you want to talk about number 5, the parent policies of Title I schools?
Yes, just a reminder that between August 20th and September 30th or first week of October, the information was on display for parents to provide any input. There was a parent involvement committee that was formed at the schools that created the plans, and there were some samples inside of your board packet. All of the Title I policies are on file in the Title I office. But once again, each school outlines what they're going to do to get parents involved and how they're going to communicate with parents.
And this is a requirement?
This is a requirement.
Under the grant,
Under
correct?
the Title I grant, yes, it is.
Any other questions or comments on the consent? Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costa. Aye. Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Bateman.
Aye.
Mrs. Ross. Mr. Floyd.
Aye.
Mrs. Butler. Aye. Mrs. Wolfmeyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carried.
That brings us to discipline.
Okay. The review of suspensions. Proposed action is that the review of suspensions listed on the report dated November 10, 2014 be approved as presented.
Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costa. Aye. Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Bateman.
Aye.
Mrs. Ross. Mr. Floyd.
Aye.
Mrs. Butler. Aye. Mrs. Wolfmeyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carried.
Expulsions, number 7. Proposed action is that the expulsions listed on the report dated November 10, 2014 be approved as presented.
Second.
Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costa. Aye. Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Bateman.
Aye.
Mrs. Ross. Mr. Floyd.
Aye.
Mrs. Butler. Aye. Mrs. Wolfmeyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carried.
Number 8, revocation of expulsions held in abeyance. Sorry. Proposed action is that the revocation of expulsions held in abeyance be listed on the report dated November 10, 2014 be approved as presented.
Second.
Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costa. Aye. Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Bateman.
Aye.
Mrs. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Cloyd.
Aye.
Mrs. Butler. Aye. Mrs. Wolfmeyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carried.
Number 9, revocation of board probation. Proposed action is that the revocation of board probation listed on the report dated November 10th, 2014 be approved as presented.
Second.
Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costa. Aye. Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Bateman.
Aye.
Mrs. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Cloyd.
Aye.
Mrs. Butler. Aye. Mrs. Wolfmeyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carried.
Students expelled by the board are referred to by number thereby ensuring privacy. Board action concerning these students have been decided in executive session.
Thank you. That brings us to presentation and suggestions by board members. Do we have any tonight? Mr. Cloyd?
Yes, in regards to the truancy issue, which I find alarming and concerning, I don't know how education can take place when almost 50% of the students in 2 of our high schools are chronically truant. I don't know what you do about that, but I did a little bit of research on both the state school code and the Juvenile Courts Act, which has provisions for dealing with truant minors in need of supervision. I've given a copy of this entire document to our council here, and I would like you to take a look at it and see what we can do in terms of what alternative approaches we can take to this, including the use of the court system to address the fact that parents are apparently not willing to see that their children are in school. Thank you.
Anybody else? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, do you have a committee report?
Why, this is December 3rd, building committee. 12 o'clock.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
Yes. Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee will meet November 20th. That's the Thursday after the Parent University event, 5 o'clock here at the Administration Building.
Okay. Mr. Cloyd?
The policy committee met last week, very productive discussion. We have a number of items that will be coming before the board next meeting, and also another policy meeting will be set sometime, I think, in the first week of December. I think it's the 6th of December. And there are quite a wide range of issues, and I think it's moving along very nicely.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Now could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.